So you might be asking yourself, hey Jeremy, where have you been for like the last 2 weeks? Nowhere. I wasn't doing anything at all. Anyways, hey guys, welcome to the lighting video of the live show series. It's been a minute. I'm late on this video. And the reason why is because we actually had the show last week and it was a little bit harder to put together than I thought it would be. And ultimately we had to actually cut a few things. For example, I actually had to cut visuals from the show, which was a super big bummer, but the lighting still worked. A lot of things went our way, some things didn't go our way, but ultimately the homies that we got to play for were amazing. And shout out to the ATC 2021 camp. You guys were awesome, and I was so happy to play for you guys. And so yeah, today we're going to talk about lighting, and I wanted to kind of cover a few different things, and I'll kind of split it into two kind of categories. The first is gear that I use, software and all that kind of stuff, and then how to actually sync your lights with your music. And I'm going to try to make it short and simple, and I'll leave some links in the description that'll talk a little bit more in depth on some of the things I cover. So first off, lighting is one of these things that can really bolster all the music in your show. We talked about it in the video covering music, how music is the main part, but lighting and visuals as well, even though we didn't get to run those. Lighting is one of these things that can bolster the music and actually enhance everything that's going on. And if you can sync up your lights and get them to move with your music, it can actually create a lot of moments where people will actually remember things because of the lighting. So let's just dive in real quick. I want to talk about a few different things. First off, I want to talk about software. Obviously, I'm running my whole show through Ableton Live from an audio perspective, and the cool thing is there's this software called Lightkey, which is the one that I use. Sadly, it's Mac only. If you're a Windows user, I'm sorry, Lightkey doesn't work for Windows, but I'll leave a link in the description for an alternative to Lightkey, because I want to kind of cover all the bases for everyone. And so Lightkey basically houses all of your commands that you're sending all of your lights. And the really cool thing is that the people who have made Lightkey have actually made it so that Ableton Live can actually control Lightkey. And it does that through something called MIDI sequencing or MIDI mapping, where basically Ableton can send a signal and Lightkey receives that signal and interprets it a certain way in order to give a certain command to all the lights. I'm not going to go super in depth in how to route everything. I'll leave some links in the description of videos that literally are like 2 or 3 minute videos that tell you exactly how to do that. But basically, Ableton is the audio source, and I send signal from Ableton into Lightkey, and then Lightkey receives all the signal that Ableton is sending it, and then disperses it to all the lighting that we have set up through something called a DMX signal. Which brings me to, how do you connect Lightkey to your lights? Well, right in this corner, I'm putting a picture of something called a DMX interface. The specific one that I use, it's called the Open DMX interface from Enttec. It's honestly not the most reliable one, but it is the cheapest and it's useful. It's a little prone to power surges, and so they have a few other ones called Open DMX Pro or the Mark II Pro, which are also amazing options and a little bit more reliable than the Open DMX. If you're on a cost-effective budget, then the Open DMX is probably the right solution for you, and it's super easy to use. It's literally plug and play, so it's got a USB input. So it has a USB input and then a 5-pin DMX output, and it comes with a cable that is a 5-pin DMX into an XLR signal. XLR, for people who aren't super aware, are microphone cables. And basically then from there, a lot of lights have on the back of them a DMX input, and you would plug that cable that's going out of the interface into the DMX input, and then from there you can just route and chain lights through XLR cables. So now that we have a little bit of the technical stuff out of the way, I want to talk a little bit about, once you start diving into Lightkey and some of the functions that are in there, how do you actually choose what to do? And I can honestly say this is super up to your preference, but I'm going to tell you what I do. My goal with lighting is to create moments in the show, and so I want to have pieces of the show where people will remember what happened because of a certain lighting cue. So I know for Please Stay Awake or something like that live, I know there's this part where it does this. Please light And I know right then when everything kind of cuts out and then just the vocal and that little boom ba dum ba da da, I know when it's just those two things, I want to actually maybe make it so that the lighting is more centralized and a little bit simpler. So we use, pretty much in the show, we use two different types of lights: light bars and these things called PARs, or circular lights, which are filled with LEDs and they're in a circle. Most of the time they're used for wash lighting, but in our circumstance, we used a haze machine and we actually got them to be directional lights. So in a song like Please Stay Awake, I like to take that moment and say, okay, I'm gonna utilize darkness, utilize the black of the space that you're in, and then I wanna highlight it. Instead of throwing all the lights at everyone all at once, I'm going to actually highlight certain lighting fixtures. So for example, Please Stay Awake, as soon as that vocal and melody comes in, I'm actually gonna only light the PARs, which are only on the ground and they're facing up, so it's like beams. And then on the drop sections, I can actually bring the full lighting. And then even then, it's not like you're just doing stagnant colors. I have the PARs doing one thing and I have the lighting bars do another thing. And Light Key has so many different commands and sequences that you can actually send to the lights that you can kind of play with it and get creative and actually do something that's like tempo synced. Ableton is sending a signal to Light Key so that Light Key can actually like know what tempo, and then you can actually give it incremental values of like, hey, if we're at 140 BPM, I want you to do quarter notes. That means it's just gonna go boom, 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 boom. Or I can say, hey, do eighth notes, boom, 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 boom. You know, it's just like I can tell it to do these sequences, and then I can do also other features like chases, where it's like it starts on this end of the stage and actually moves all the way across the stage, and I have a few moments in the show where it does that. Or I can just strobe on a color. You know, there's so many options. It's more about finding your preference inside of the show, and once you've built out the audio of the show, you can actually say, okay, I can hear, you know, we're talking about Please Stay Awake, so let's just stay in that vein for a second. Please Stay Awake, there's this one part in the live part where it gets very minery, and so I actually changed the colors from pinkish, purplish to like really red, dark red, deep red. And then I say, okay, there's a few parts where I can actually highlight stuff so that I have this little section. Did you hear the little hi-hat twirl, the and I'm like, okay, I want to do a strobe on that to signify and actually highlight that so that it can actually hit a little bit harder when I sync the audio and the visual together. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. There's so many moments like that in the show, and I'll give you one last tip, and that's don't be afraid of simplicity. You know, there's all these settings that Light Key can do, and its ability is massive, but the biggest thing that I want to take away is simplicity often is the most effective thing you can do. Stagnant lights, stagnant shot, and then subtle movements are really important in a show. You don't want your audience to get tired out of just having a strobe light constantly in their face for an hour. So guys, I hope that kind of answers a little bit of the questions, explains a little bit of the technical side. I'm not going to reveal too much about my stage setup because I want you guys to see it in the video that's coming out on Saturday, July 31st, the premiere of the live show. I'm so excited. We just got back the footage from it, and it is nuts. It is absolutely crazy, and so I'm so excited for you guys to see it. But until then, guys, please share this video, like it, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you guys can just know when I'm posting videos, and I will talk to you guys later. See ya.